Welcome to the Soulful Spirit Talks with Susanna Medium, your chat show to spiritually inspire you here on Pulse Talk Radio.
So thank you very much for joining in for another wonderful episode of our show Soulful Spirit Talks with Susanna Medium. I hope you are very well, and I really appreciate you joining in and tuning in. So this is a show about everything soulful, spiritful, spirited, always the good ones. And then it is with me, Soulful Spirit Talks with Susanna Medium. So it's good to be here, and again, thanks for being here and tuning in. So as I mentioned you last time, this show is about everything soulful, everything spirited, everything to relate to our human life, both on the materialistic level, how we are in our physical bodies, in our mental, emotional, etheric bodies and energies, and beyond, everything beyond. So everything what I'm bringing to you is about inspiring you and also having discussions about certain topics related to being soulful, spirited, spiritful, and uplifting. And I really trust that in this episode you are going to hear something for yourself to take away, to practice, to reflect, to look into. So let's just start this show again. So Soulful Spirit Talks with Susanna Medium. Now, when I am creating a podcast or I'm preparing for a talk, I always ask Spirit, what shall we talk about? Show me the science, show me the insight, show me the idea, anything what we need to talk about. And how it happens is in the very moment, what is in the air. So this is how I can see it in the most, probably the simplest form. What is in the air? What is in the frequency? Not just for me, but for all of us. Because if I am experiencing, then it's very likely that you are experiencing it either at the same time or before me or after me. But then it's very much, if you are taking it in a timeline, a linear timeline, sooner or later we are all experiencing it. So the topics I have been talking about is always relating to our lives. So sooner or later we are going to experience these things. And quite interestingly, on preparation or on preparing for this talk, nothing really came to me. And then I said to Spirit, oh yes, it's going to be interesting. I know, usually you have a lot of ideas, but on this occasion, nothing came forward directly, and my reflection immediately went to, maybe we need to talk about silence. Maybe it is another episode we are talking about silence. So that is behind today's episode. We are going to talk about silence, and because I am a musician, I'm going to bring you musical ideas, or how some composers approached the conversation, the concept of silence, how they used silence. And then also from my musical background, music therapy background, in fact, what it could mean when we are experiencing silence in the relationship between the client and myself as a therapist. And then also what it means experiencing silence when we are doing psychic mediumship readings, because that is a different parameter of everything. And again, how we can experience in our human lives silence in our homes, in our gardens, in nature, and again, very importantly, within our physical bodies. So I am aiming to touch upon all these different aspects, and then at the same time, while I'm leading this conversation, anything which comes to me in relation to this topic, silence. But my very, very first question to you is, what is your first reaction when this topic comes up, silence? Is it something you are looking forward to? You probably have a very busy lifestyle, and longing to experience silence is just something you might just wish for yourself, or just wishing that I could experience silence. I just wish I could have a silent moment to myself. Maybe that is your conversation. Or maybe your life is very quiet. Maybe you don't have many people around you. You don't have any direct link with conversations, and maybe you experience silence within yourself, and maybe it brings up different memories or conversations or feelings, emotions. So while you are listening to this conversation, just be mindful about your own experience and what it really means to you. And I'm just inviting you to have that open mind and open heart to see and to experience something maybe useful. Maybe you are taking something useful away for yourself as well. So for me, silence is a fascinating space. I love silence. I love my space. And then I realized it about a good, let's say 8 or 9 years ago, when I decided just to have very, very simple background sounds and noises in my home. And being a musician, of course, that meant a big change, because I would normally have a lot of music on, or I would play my musical instruments. But I realized for the development of my soul and my spirit, and to keep things in balance, silence is just paramount to experience. So I am absolutely fine with silence. And but I know it's not everybody's case, not everybody's conversations. And you see, I remember I used to have a colleague who really enjoyed talking all the time. And of course, teachers, we love talking. That's why we end up being in front of a class, so that we've got the audience and we can pass some information, some knowledge, some wisdom, some empowerment for the next generation. So we love conversations, we love our voices, and we love talking. And this particular colleague really enjoyed talking, but then she was doing it all the time. And she admitted that for her to be silent is not a space where she wants to be, where she wants to experience anything. So her life is about talking, music, theater, art, and even her husband is a musician, so they have a lot of music and sounds going on. But here we go. I remember I was very challenged at times when I really wanted to experience silence in the staff room, or silence in my music room, being a music teacher at that time, and just having that constant conversation. I really felt annoying, but until the point I realized that was triggering me, because I then found the way how to experience silence somewhere else. But then you see, that might be a conversation for you as well, because we either like or we dislike, we either enjoy or we really try to avoid silence. And noise and silence are two ends of the same thing, really. But going back to music, okay, so when I ask Spirit, let's show me what we are going to talk about. We got the topic, we got the theme, silence, and then immediately my father in Spirit Consciousness, who has an extremely funny, strange, quirky sense of humor, he gave me the piece Silence, composed by John Cage in 1952, and that really made me think. So it's quite interesting that we are going to talk about a composition where you would not hear anything, any musical sound or human voice or sound of an instrument on the stage if you happen to go to a musical concert hall or watch the performance. But then it really made me think, let's just look into what is the conversation behind the piece Silence, which was composed in 1952. So we need to know that John Cage was educated, or at least had one of his teachers in composition was Shostakovich, who himself was very forward-thinking and pushing the boundaries at the early 20th century. So by the time John Cage came forward, he was already in a good space that he could express what he wanted through sounds and music. So after, and listen to this is actually very interesting, after the Second World War, of course, people experiencing all the sounds and noises no human voice should be, or no human ear should experience, then he realized that, I'm going to create a piece. Okay, so, but then I was curious, so what is behind the composition? So John Cage decided that, people need to have a different experience when they come to the concert hall. Of course, they want to experience harmony and beauty for their own mind and their souls. But he invited people to sit throughout that was 4 minutes 33 seconds in silence, because he wanted people to experience not the absence of music and noise or harmony, but the presence of noise and sounds what they can hear around themselves, both in the audience, amongst each other, and also within themselves in their physical bodies. And of course, people found it really strange at the beginning, but in reflection, you can imagine the impact it had on people, because maybe after the Second World War, people just, got on with their lives and did not have much opportunity to really reflect. And yes, of course, they were planning their lives ahead, but within themselves, how they were. Maybe they were still believing for their loved ones they lost, and they did not have really the chance to get through certain emotions. So the space created for them was, or might have been, quite beneficial. But then, quite interestingly, John Cage also studied Buddhism and looked into ancient teachings. So that was also behind his idea to bring mindfulness or peace or silence to people. And you see, the whole situation made me think of another composer, and I'm talking about Beethoven. And Beethoven, who composed the Symphony Number 9. If you are familiar with the piece, Symphony Number 9 and the fourth movement, where we sing Ode to Joy. And while this is very interesting, because Beethoven, towards the end of his life, he lost his sense of hearing. So it meant that by the time he was composing this piece, of course he had the knowledge and experience of musical sounds and musical instruments and the timbre of the instruments and human voice, but then he was composing it while he was already deaf, not being able to hear the sounds outside of himself. But then still he was able to bring forward harmony, bringing harmony out of silence. And then of course it was received absolutely beautifully, standing ovation. And even though he was a very grumpy man apparently, but then he was quite joyful because people enjoyed his composition. And you see why it is really interesting bringing something absolutely beautiful out of silence again. Then he was the one, especially in this piece, where he included human voice as a chorus, as part of a symphony, which up to that point consisted or was performed only by musical instruments. So out of nothing comes something absolutely beautiful and empowering, and especially with the words Ode to Joy, bringing up, talking to humanity and bringing everybody together. And then it's quite fascinating to feel the two pieces next to each other, because one of them is the absence of musical sound, the other one is the fullness of musical sound, and both of them are bringing us something, a space and a time to reflect, and then coming back to ourselves, coming home to ourselves, what our lives mean, what our community and what our humanity mean to us. So if you have a chance, go and listen to the two pieces, John Cage, Silence, composed in 1952, and then again Beethoven, Symphony Number 9, fourth movement. So it's absolutely, absolutely beautiful. But then, moving on to what it means when we have, let's say, in a music therapy session, myself as a music therapist, what it means when we have silence, when the client does not want to experience does not want to experience any musical sound. So it means nothing is coming from the person, no singing, no instrumental play, nothing is coming from me to reflect the sound. So for the outside world, this is what it looks like. Two people in the room. One of them is the client, not wanting to do anything, not expressing anything, and then the therapist, whose job is to reflect and hold the space and accommodate and allow the person to experience or express himself or herself. And I remember I had a few of those sessions with actually children who for various reasons they did not want to be in the session. And I remember one particular child sitting in the session for half an hour, sitting in a corner, really hiding his face and not wanting to be there and not doing anything, not stretching, not tapping, absolutely nothing. And my job was to hold the space. But then the only thing I can, well, not just the only thing, but then the most important thing I can take from the person without me thinking of anything and analyzing anything is just being myself and being the same person as the other one who doesn't want to do anything with expression. And the form what he's expressing or was expressing was silence. So my job immediately is to listen to the breathing pattern of that individual, and just being in the space, maybe for 20 minutes, not doing anything. For the outside world, it looks a little bit strange, but two people are not doing anything there. But then it has been so very powerful, because by accommodating and allowing the child not to do anything and not to express anything, that was what the child needed to experience, that he was accepted in fullest form within his own experience. So my job was, I remember at that time, following the breath. So humming along and actually going along with his breath. So when he was taking a breath, I was doing. So I was really following his take, was following his lead. So extremely powerful. And then from that, something else started coming forward in the following sessions. So we could have that moment when we don't want to do anything and we really close down ourselves, or at least we look like or sound like for the outside world. But we need to know that we cannot be ourselves, because with that we are experiencing something for ourselves, and we are expressing something for the outside world. And then if there is one person around, then there can be, or there is, a reaction from that person one way or another. So experiencing ourselves as humans through sounds and silence is something very, 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 very raw and very innate. And then it's quite fascinating, because I know that the very first sense what we are coming to realize we have is the sense of hearing, and when we are born, and when we go, apparently the very last sense still with us is a sense of hearing, and anything in between in our lives what we are creating. So I really feel that you will take the inspiration, and after this conversation, after this podcast, you start listening to your environment and yourself, and in the environment, not just the man-made sounds, but the sounds of nature and your fellow humans as well. But then silence. So what happens when we are experiencing silence in a psychic and mediumistic reading? Now that's a big topic. And I remember the very first time when myself experienced it as a reader, it really freaked me out, because honestly I thought God, spirit, consciousness left me alone, or I lost my senses. I'm not able to do the work what I'm supposed to be doing, or something is wrong. Okay, so that was the big conversation. Something is wrong. And then from that space, it is so very easy to drop the energy down to the ego, down to the level of the ego and the mind. And once we start thinking about the whys, the whats, the whos, and or how, and all those things, it means that the energy, we are not working with the energy. That is a very, very dense reality, and we are doing something not really beneficial for ourselves and for the whole situation. But then you see, it takes three to tango. It's not two, I know it's two, but then it takes three to tango. It takes you as a person who is asking the question, who wants to have the reading. You have a question, so you have the intention. Okay, so that is your point of reference. And then we have God, spirit consciousness, who is always forever there for us, all the time, surrounding us and within us. We are part of it, so that is always there. And then, of course, we are there as a third. It takes three to tango. The third one is myself as a medium, the one who's in the middle. And then I need to be without my mind. We need to be without my. I need to be without my mind and without my ego as much as I possibly can, because that is the purpose. I'm there, just to be the channel, just to be the medium. So it takes three to tango. So when there is silence, okay, under silence, what I mean by that, it means when the reading, the conversation is going fluently, it's beautiful, the client is understanding everything, you the client, and you are inspired, and you give feedback, you give either a yes or a no, but then there is something going on, or I don't understand, but most of the time it is really sharp and yes, and it's quick, because this is how spirit works with me. And creates a situation. But occasionally it happens that things are going differently. And then by experience and by learning, I got to the point not to make myself wrong for this experience if I'm not receiving anything. And then, of course, yes, at the beginning the question was, oh, spirit left me alone, I have to do the work by myself, but I know I can't do it by myself because it's not my mind conversation, and I need the information from the higher realms. So what is happening? And of course, knowing that spirit consciousness is always there, it's not that it disappeared, the energy disappeared. And when there is silence, then if I'm not receiving something, so of course my senses are working. It could happen from time to time that spirit consciousness or guides or spirits or angels, whichever way we want to label it or name it, but then they do certain changes with our senses just to tune in or bring something in or introduce something else. But there can be some very gradual and very, very gentle, very delicate shift, but not that much that suddenly we are not getting anything. And even if it happens, then we know that yes, the information will start coming forward again, and then the situation, the reading continues. But then when there is silence, then what happens? And you see, in my practice, I don't go the way that now I'm asking spirit, show me this or anything else, or it's not that I am asking questions, but because I know some people, might work that way, but in my reality, I wait and I just very quickly check in with myself and then take myself back to my space where I am working and I am ready to receive the information. So this is how I work. But then when there is no information, then I realize the question is whose silence it is. And I remember that once I realized it by myself, it really kicks out my ego and everything starts shaping itself, because it's not a direct conversation about the client, about spirit consciousness or about myself, but then I'm just opening whose silence it is. And then what very, very, very normally happens is that it goes back to the client, because you can ask a question, you can have the intention that, yes, I would like to know the answer, I would like to receive guidance, I would like to receive some inspiration from my loved one, from spirit consciousness. So you tell me this, and spirit hears that. But then there could be a level in reality that even though we are asking the question, there is in denial, or there's that point that actually, yes, I would like to have the information, but I want to hold it back, hold myself back, hold the information back. I want to block the energy, or even if I'm not consciously doing it, but that might be also the situation. And I know from experience again that very often when there is such situation, whose silence it goes to the client, because spirit consciousness is working. I am in the working mode, so it's all set up, we are all fine, and whose silence it is. And very often I ask the client, do you sometimes feel that you need space around you? Or have you noticed that recently that is your experience, that I need space, or you might be feeling alone in your current situation? And the most beautiful thing is that is a beautiful, loving moment when the client admits to themselves and to me, as I say, that actually you are right, that is my reality. I am here to ask a question, I want to receive guidance, but that is my reality and I'm really stuck there. And then that's why the silence. And then from that very point, the conversation kicks up again, and then information starts flowing, and we overcome the situation. And it's so very beautiful, because yes, we need to have these moments of silence, because the reading can go very fluently and beautifully and inspiring, and everything is fine and we are all happy. But there are moments when there is a different level of healing, empowerment is being experienced. And I know that we all find a medium, and we all find a situation where we need to ask the question, and we will receive the guidance, or we will find the person who is holding the space for us according to our needs. And personally, for myself as a medium, I know I love the conversations when all the pieces of all the information is received and details, and it's fascinating, and we are all enjoying the readings and everything is fine and flowing, and oh my goodness me. But then I love these situations when we have the moments of silence, because it gives learning for myself as a medium. It gives a huge empowering the situation and opportunity for the client to experience something. And maybe it's not most importantly the information what they receive, that is the most important. Yes, that is important. But then having experience that he or she was gotten within his or within her silence. So that is the reality, because maybe that is what the person needed to experience, that somebody noticed, somebody acknowledged, and somebody is working on that level without forcing, without telling them anything or everything. But then that comes from the person. And then what can be even more empowering and even useful for the life of that person than themselves realizing that is their reality. So silence can be present in those situations as well. Now, another interesting aspect of this conversation is when we choose silence from within. So we can experience silence from the outside or outside the environment. But then what happens when we intentionally choose silence and we are expressing something with silence? So right now actually I'm talking about that condition which is called the selective mutism, where an individual who is otherwise able to speak and communicate using his or her voice and speech, for some reason in a given situation or surrounded by certain people or certain environment, decides not to speak. And of course, we can work with these individuals, but then it is a personal choice and then the intention coming from within. And it is basically themselves who can make the change from within. And you see, in the whole conversation, making or creating silence intentionally is also brought forward an experience, what I chose intentionally a few years ago when I went to Holy Island, which is a small island in Scotland, for a 2-week retreat. And I remember at that time, for the weekends, 2 weekends, we were participating in certain retreats, yoga and breathing and various things. But then the rest of the time I was by myself because I chose to be by myself. And I remember I was helping out in the garden, but rest of the time I was doing things which really suited me. And then since there is nothing in the island, no shops or no venues to go to, but just the nature itself, I intentionally chose a few days where I created silent retreat for myself. And I remember we could buy the little badge, silent retreat, for those people who were also doing something on the island. And then also some visitors who occasionally they could come to the island. And that was a sign for them to know that this particular person is choosing to be silent for the day or as long as they are wearing the badge. And I remember I took a few days, and of course I thought it's going to be easy because I like silence, so it's going to be easy for me to be silent. But within a few hours I realized that it actually has a very profound effect and really benefit on myself. And to be honest, what I used the time was for walking around in the island, climbing the mountains, talking to the elements of nature, reflecting. I had a journal, so I was continuously writing and reflecting and really using that time and space. And I remember after 2 weeks when I came back to Scotland and to England, I remember getting back to the noisiness of that environment just felt really, really strange. But within myself, it was absolutely beautiful. The whole experience was beautiful because within myself I found a space which felt really my home and my inner self. And knowing that me choosing complete silence, not talking to people, really opened up the space within myself, and then opened up that space how I am perceiving reality and my surroundings around me, my reality. And it also gave me an opportunity, because actually it's lovely, it's relating to that conversation, how we are using our senses. Because I remember when I chose not to speak for those 4 days, for a couple of days, my senses became sharper. My sense of hearing, how it's not just a two, 3-dimensional hearing, using my 2 ears, but having that sharpness within the ordinary sounds was just absolutely beautiful to experience. And because it became so very sharp, coming back to the mainland felt really numbing. That yes, I could use my sense of hearing, my sharp sense of hearing, but then it did not have that impact. It was a different reality. But then going back to the senses, I know from spiritual conversations what spirit and higher consciousness and higher dimensional beings, they were showing me that the sense what we are using here on this earth plane, of course we are using our 2 ears, which allow us to hear in 3-dimensional reality. But then what spirit consciousness was showing me, that while we are living on this earth plane, that reality, using our senses in such manner, is very limited. It is very, of course, everything is very much limited on our earth plane. But when we are opening the conversation to multidimensional realities, and not just in comparison to the different planets and planetary systems, but then really expanding the consciousness, it means that every single human has the ability or a possibility, maybe not in our lifetimes, but then using our senses, not just as if we have 2 ears, but then we have the sensors, the auditory sensors, 360 degrees around us in all kind of dimensions, if you can imagine. This is how I can explain it the most. And what they showed me was that using that type of sense allows us to really receive the frequencies from higher consciousness. And now actually I was pausing for a little bit because I wanted to say the wisdom and teachings from higher dimensions, but it is really about frequencies, how we are feeling, how we are sensing, receiving frequencies, and then we are translating it into reality, how we are understanding it. But what we need to know, and we need to understand that we are the sense of hearing, what we have is very much limited to the earth reality, the earthy reality, because there is within that sense there are different dimensions at the very, very same time, and then we are able to tune into those as well. So giving an example to you, myself as a medium, I'm not just working with the grandfathers and grandparents and those who passed over, but then also multidimensional beings. And then when they are communicating, they are not communicating through my sense of ears, my 2-3 dimensional sense of hearing, but then they are showing the frequencies through a different dimensions. And I know I'm not using my physical sense of hearing, but using how I can really describe it is that I sense and I know the sound and I know the meaning to what I am receiving. But it is actually quite interesting, because while I'm saying it is actually combining, the whole experience is combining the different senses. So it's not just my sense of hearing, but how you know you're hearing. So it really overlaps, that various senses overlap, because for us to be able to sense those or receive those frequencies from multidimensional reality, we need to let go of the limits of our 3-dimensional senses, such as our hearing, and then being able to open to receive whatever way we are receiving. And it is most certainly not through our 3-dimensional senses, because that is in itself very, very limiting and limited. So what they showed me, I remember that the reality, what is out there, we are able to, humans, if you are tuning in, we are able to receive. And how I can what I can liken this experience to is, if you are sitting in a room and then you've got the loudspeakers in all different angles, all over the place, above you, below you, behind you, in front of you, in all different angles. And then the information is coming from all these loudspeakers at the same time with slightly different tone or different frequencies. Something is very, very different than the other one, from the other one. And it happens at the same time. And while you are receiving it, your job is only to receive. And within yourself, you are, or the information is streamlining itself so that it is simplifying itself down to the level of my human senses, so that I am able to express it. And I know that when I'm receiving those energies and those frequencies, I usually use the word the sensation is, because even just to describe that experience, we don't really have words in our vocabulary to experience it, because that experience does not exist in our reality. Therefore, there are no words to express. And no words to express, so we cannot create the reality, that reality. So that's why the only thing I can do is just trying to explain or describe the sensation using vocabulary, the language, what we are familiar here, what we are familiar with here on our 3-dimensional reality. So I hope it made sense. It is an absolutely fascinating conversation, but it is all part of silence. And then actually part of it, I need to mention here that silence, we can experience silence even if we are in a very, very busy environment where we have very noisy, loud traffic and people and noises and animals and all kind of various sounds. And within that environment, it is impossible. So it is possible. It is possible for the human to experience silence. The sensation is as if the air and sounds are being vacuumed out or off or away from the human body, and then as if we are in a bubble, as if I am in a bubble, and suddenly there is no silence. It's not even white noise what I hear, but it's suddenly there is that huge gap, and then within that gap there is no frequency, there is no anything what I can hang on to as meaning around. And then I know by experience that when something like this happens, even if I'm in a very, very busy environment, it can be in London in the middle of Trafalgar Square, for instance, when I'm feeling that sensation, it means that the energies are opening, and then spirit consciousness or higher dimensional reality is ready to communicate something. And I know it happened a few times. That is a time when I need to sit down and start writing. How I receive, I need to start writing it, or I need to record it in another form. But it means that maybe we just need to be aware and need to be open to one day we experience silence in a way. That silence, that moment of silence, that is even shorter, even less than a breathing space. That is what consciousness is using to open something what is not visible, not available when we are approaching it from our human reality. But you see, quite rightly, you might be asking, so how can it be possible for myself? I don't have much experience. I'm not a medium, and I have not been working with light and energy. What advice can you give me? And what I can actually, two things here. Okay, two things can happen. The time what we are living right now, there is that huge shift of energy, massive awareness is opening, whether we like it or not. And then if we have been working with energy or working on ourselves for many, many years, that is a natural, that natural continuation of now we are experiencing something. The next stage, what we are experiencing. And that feels more normal than any other times. But what happens is that if you don't have any practice, meditation practice or anything, and then you are very new to this conversation, it could quite easily happen to you that one day you wake up and suddenly you are aware of your senses. Suddenly you feel that you are hearing differently. Suddenly you are questioning your experience. And since you have not studied or have not experienced that, have not looked into or practiced anything, that can be either a frightening experience or it could be something what you welcome. And depending on how you approach your situation, you are able to work and progress. But what I feel is quite fascinating is that experiencing our senses, and on this occasion experiencing your sense of hearing and also how you feel silence, can have an immediate impact on you, and can happen, the shift of energy can happen to you very, very suddenly and unexpectedly. So just by listening to this conversation here is an opening for you, and just giving you that energy that when you experience something like this, welcome it and feel into it as opposed to trying to push it away. And what I can really suggest is just feel yourself in your physical body. If you are able to pause for a couple of minutes, closing your eyes, putting your focus on your breathing, and putting your feet on the ground, and then just being within the space what you are experiencing. And I know that it is going back to the conversation at the beginning, that some people find it frightening to be in silence, just like my colleague I mentioned to you. She found it very, very frightening. That's why she always created the cacophony of sounds, a medley of sounds and music around herself. But what could happen when we are really questioning, or when we are really frightened, when we are really scared of experiencing silence? So my invitation to you is that if you are not very familiar with that experience, or find it that it is really pushing your boundaries, then just start with a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes, literally just closing your eyes, or even if you don't want to do that, keep your eyes open, and then just sitting where you are. And you might have something at the background, which is fine if this is what you want to do. Choose, because that sound might be holding the space for you, keeping you safe, and that is a familiarity in your life, so be it. But your job is to put your focus on yourself and on your own experience. And even if you feel frightened or agitated or anything like that, aim or try to be in that space for a couple of minutes, and that can be the opening. And then you get on with your everyday life, and then another occasion you go back and you try it again and give it a go. And then you might feel that over time your experience might or will change. It is again depending on the willingness, what you feel behind that. If you really feel challenged by being in silence, then you might want to look into what is the cause of that. Maybe there is something when you were growing up, and then you were left alone in the room, and it was quiet, it was frightening, and just by being in a silent space brings up memories, or brings up feelings, sensations, memories, and all those experiences. Work through that experience, because once you do that, then something else is opening up for you. The time what we live right now is giving us so many opportunities, not just to experience reality out there, but then experience reality within ourselves. And then this conversation actually is leading to what kind of meditation practice you have. Because I know, yes, sometimes people can have music, people can choose guided meditation, people can do various things, whether they do it live within a group or within themselves, or they are using some kind of recorded material. It's absolutely fine if this is what you feel that you need to experience. And then you see the other conversation, the other end is that you are absolutely fine and you are sitting silently and you meditate in complete silence, like myself. That is the reality. But then by experience, okay, or from my own experience, I remember for many years meditation was it was an experience with music. I was using guided meditation, and one of those when we are going down the path and then we imagine the water cascading down on the side of the mountain, and then we meet our guides, and then we have a discussion, and various things happen, and then we come back from that meditation. And then of course there is a voice who is talking to us, and there is also sound, musical sound, because then we can use music to hold a space for us. That gives us security, that gives us some kind of support for our own breathing and our reality. But what I found was that when I started meditating in silence, that gave me so much more opening suddenly. And the more I went into the world of silence, the less I needed music and any kind of support, somebody talking and guiding me, inviting me to meet my guides and all that conversation, the experience really shifted, because I became aware how much or what is available within silence. And we might think, or we might feel, that there is nothing in silence, but on the contrary, there is so much there, and then it is there for everybody, because it is a personal experience. And because it is a personal experience, the outcome is going to be very personal, very individual, very unique to your makeup, and opens up what it needs to open up. If we haven't dealt with personal trauma, personal conversations, or if we are in complete denial about our past or experiences, and then also past life, that's a big topic as well, or anything, then it might have a different energy to it. If you are open and willing, and then if this is actually the first time you are trying to do anything like this, then you will have a different outcome. The most important thing is actually, now I'm noticing I'm using the word outcome. I think I said it about 2 or 3 times. The most important thing here is not to have any outcome, or not to anticipate any outcome. Actually, I should say this. Not to anticipate anything when we are experiencing silence. Because in that very moment, there is no point of where I'm coming from or where I am going to. The only thing which is present is the very moment that we are in, that very moment of silence. It is not like what we experienced the second before, a moment ago, and then it's not what we are going to experience next. The power of being in complete silence is, it cannot be underestimated, or cannot be really put to the side, because it's so very, not just empowering. Being empowered by silence is a result in that sense, but not because I want to achieve it as a result, but it is just happening by itself. Being in silence, whether we are a beginner, silent practitioner, actually I can make up a new word for that, a silencer. We need to make up a new word for this. I don't want to use the word mindfulness, I don't want to use the word meditation. I'm really talking about the experience of being silent. So whether you are a complete beginner or an advanced person who has this reflective lifestyle, reflecting on everything, then there is something every single time when you sit in silence, when you experience silence. Just try it. Give yourself that opportunity, sitting and breathing, and you don't even need to focus on anything or follow your breathing or noticing your thoughts, nothing like that. You are just there in that very moment and just being. And what really powerful is that you might feel, your physical body. That is actually a lovely essence of this, is that you might feel various sensations. We might experience various things within your physical body, the heat, change of heat, or buzziness, or tingling sensation, or you get to the point that actually I'm not feeling my physical body. My physical body becomes a jelly, like a jellyfish creature. The only thing I am feeling is my sense of breathing. The sensation is that as if I am a very primitive little thing living at the bottom of the ocean, without any limbs, any awareness, any sensation, nothing. The only thing is there is a heart, and then there is a breathing system, and then it's just pulsating, and that is the only reality in that very moment. What is really, really beautiful whether we are working spiritually or not, that very often we say, yes, I want to sit in meditation because I'd like to meet my guide, I would like to receive some message, I would like to do this and that, and then it's fine, it can serve its purpose if that is the intention. But when we choose to sit in silence, we can let go of these kind of expectations and then just being in the space, because within the space, within that silence, what we need to experience will be experienced. And then that's why we cannot say we can have some expectations, because yes, we go through that stage that yes, I'm meditating, I'm sitting quietly, I'm sitting in silence, and then nothing happened after half an hour, so it is not working, it's not meaningful, so I'm not going to do it anymore, or even for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And a lot of people might abandon the idea of working with silence, experience themselves in silence. So the invitation is, the only intention is that we give ourselves that time. And then whatever is being experienced within that time frame is what we need to experience for that very moment. And another time the experience is going to be something different. Might be similar to the previous one, or might be something very, very, very different. If we meant to receive guidance, spiritual messages from our family who passed over from spirit consciousness, or from any guides, if we are working with guides or angels or multidimensional beings, using the sensation, what they are showing us, the shift of awareness, shifting, going through different dimensions, going back to past and future, if you are thinking on the linear timeline, anything can happen, and anything can be experienced or come forward. And even the word come forward is giving us this perception of three-dimensional reality. So it's not here, but it is going to be here. So we need to let go of that as well. Silence is, I feel, in our time, especially the time what we live right now, is just so very important that we'll give ourselves that opportunity regularly, make it a part of our lives, our human existence. Really, very much giving ourselves that experience, that we tend to go through life rushing and being busy with people and situations and making it very dense for us, dense three-dimensional reality. But we really need to know that there is so much more out there for us, and it's not just out there, because in fact nothing is out there. Nothing is out there, everything is being experienced within ourselves. This is quite interesting how we are using language as well. But then what is available for every single one of us to experience within ourselves? Because when we say we are experiencing something out there, it means we needed to experience it within ourselves first. And that's why the reality outside is being experienced in as a consequence of that. So if it makes sense. So an absolutely fascinating conversation. I touched upon many sub-subjects of this big topic of silence, and I must say not all sub-subjects or anything what we can discuss or what we can talk about this topic. If you feel that you are drawn to this conversation, or if you feel that you have gained something out of this, feel free to send an email to hello@susannamedium.com, or alternatively visiting my website, which is susannamedium.com. Susanna Medium is 9 letters, Susanna, ZSUZSANNA medium.com. I would love to read about your experiences, your insight, what you have experienced or what you are curious about, and then also what really ticks you, what really makes you a human, a soulful and spirited human in our current reality. So thank you very much for joining in. That was our Soulful Spirit Talks with Susanna Medium. And feel free to join and tune in another time. And for the time being, take a couple of beautiful breaths in and out and enjoy the silence.